Hey guys, gals, and non binary pals, and welcome back to another episode of the Fangirl Freaks Out Podcast. I am your host, Alyssa, and surprise, surprise, this week we're not talking about My Hero Academia. I've actually been thinking a lot about some of my favorite books lately, so I wanted to kind of talk about that this week. Especially too, because since I've been reading the manga for My Hero, it got me thinking about like the other like full on books that I've read, like that aren't manga. So I don't know how else to explain that. So I thought this week I would talk about those and I guess kind of like recommend them. I don't know. Like that's the best way I could think of explaining that. But yeah, so this week is new. um Something new, something fresh. Trying to think for update wise. I will be out of town next week, so I will try my best to get a podcast episode up, but who knows? And if I do, it's not going to be of the same quality as these have been because I'm going to be limited on my equipment and I'll probably have to work from my laptop rather than my like desktop PC, which my laptop doesn't run as fast and as well as my desktop does. I mean, that's just essentially how things work in general most of the time with these kind of things. But yeah, so as far as updates on that go, I think that's it. And this is gonna be like a more chilled out podcast episode compared to like past weeks, I guess. But yeah, so for these book recs, I will be like naming the books or the series because some of them are series and the authors. So you like if it interests you, you can go check it out and like kind of give like a brief summary of like what the books or stories or whatever are about without giving away too much. Trying my best not to give away too much, but yeah. So the first book series that I want to recommend because I just remember loving it so much. Sorry, I like had a moment of technical issues there. But anyway, the first series I want to recommend is called it's the Vampire Girl series by, I'm going to probably butcher this name and I'm sorry, I will spell it out, but Kinraid? I don't know, but Karpov space Kinrade. Now, this series I remember like absolutely adoring and like funny enough, there's like 7 books in this series, I think, and I read them all within the span of a month. That's how good they were. And it was because I think it was like, or I got introduced to it through, I can't remember how I found it, but I got introduced to this series and I was like, well, I want to read this series. And then I saw there were 7 books and I was like, well, and I'm a broke, or at the time it was a sophomore in college. So like I was a really broke college student. And and so like I couldn't find them in the library. Well, I didn't go to like our local library, but like the school library has like non or like fictional books and stuff like non resources research material or whatever, as well as like research material. But anyway, like I couldn't find it there, and like I didn't have a local library card. Like I have one for my hometown because I used to live in the library in like middle school and high school, which is where most of these like come from on this list. But yeah, so I didn't have a way of getting it there, so I found that the whole series was on Kindle Unlimited, but I, being the broke college student I was, did not have the funds to like subscribe to Kindle Unlimited, so I used the free trial, which I think was like a month, and I had that month to quickly read I don't think I read the last book because the last book was like kind of more of a spin-off of like a side story of one of the characters in the main series. So I didn't end up reading it because one, I was burnt out from reading 6 of the books, but 2 is like, I like more focus on this main like family or whatever, this main dynamic. So yeah, so I mean, I loved every second of it. It was like a really good series. And so what this series is about, let me give like a brief description. So like if it interests you, you can like go and read it. But so the series is about, I can't remember the main girl's name, but it's like about this girl who like I guess her mom, or I think her mom made like a deal with, not the devil, but like made a deal with some people, and she essentially like has to marry one of like these 7 princes, and the 7 princes are named after the 7 deadly sins, and she ends up having to stay with the Prince of War, and like they kind of like fall in love and whatever. Like there's so much to this series, and like I think the first 3 books cover their story, and then like the second set of 3 follow their son's story. Well, it follows a different girl, but like the girl ends up with their, I don't know. It's like it's been a while since I read it because like it's been 2 years or so, but I highly recommend it. It's like a really good, there's a lot of drama, there's a lot of plot twists, there's like, it's a really good series. I highly recommend it. I mean, I highly recommend all of the books that I'm going to talk about today. But yeah. So Vampire Girl series, it's literally just called Vampire Girl, and I think like each book has like a different title, but like essentially it's like Vampire Girl series by Karpov Kinrad is how I'm going to keep saying it, but I don't know if that's right, but it's Karpov space Kinrade, and that's how you spell the author's name. So that's the first book that I want to recommend, or series. The second one, so for this series, I don't know if I like have full jurisdiction to like recommend it, but like, because I've only read the first book of the series, but I've read the first book of it, and then like I started the second one, but like the series as a whole is intriguing, so I plan to read all of them. And I just learned there was like 3 more books than I thought. Wasn't like, I thought it was just the first 3 books in the series, and then I just learned there's like 3 more or something like that. I don't know, there's more, but this series is called I Hunt Killers by Barry Lyga, and it's such a good book. Like like I said, I finished reading the first book, which is called I Hunt Killers, and then the second book is called Game. I had to look at my books like in front of me on my bookshelf because I own the hard copies to these. But I Hunt Killers I originally found during high school, and I like read some of it, but then because I had got it from the local library, and like I didn't have any more like renewals of the like rental or whatever it's called, and then I had to like return it, and I didn't have time in high school to read it fully. So like as an adult, I think recently, like late last year, late 2020, I ended up buying the book. And no, I already owned it. I bought it, I don't remember, maybe junior year, but I did buy it. And then because of quarantine and everything, I actually had like time to finally sit down and read it, and I finished it, and then I bought the second book and I started that. But yeah, like it's really good. The series essentially follows he's like 16, 17, I don't know, this teenage boy named Jasper, who is the son of a serial killer and was raised to essentially be the perfect serial killer by his serial killer dad. But he doesn't want that. He doesn't want to be a serial killer. He doesn't want to prove everybody right. And instead, he tries to use the skills that he learned from his dad to hunt serial killers. That's essentially, that's why it's called I Hunt Killers. But like, there's more to it than that. Like, there's so, like, it's just a really good series. Like, I highly recommend it. I want it to be turned into a movie so bad. And as someone who studied film in college, and like that's what my college degree is in, I'm like, I could see this as a movie and it would do, I feel like it would do so well. But I mean, that's also bias of me because I'm like, I really want to see it as a movie anyway. But yeah, so the I Hunt Killer series is one that I highly recommend by Barry Lyga. I think I'm saying his last name right. I hope so. But yeah, so the first book, like I said, is called I Hunt Killers. The second book is called Game. And the third book is called Blood of Something, I think. I don't know. But then, like I said, there's like other ones that are like have also been released since then, and I don't know all the names, but I'm sure you could easily find like a list of all of them if you're interested in the series. But it very much gives like Dexter vibes, I think is like the closest I could think of to like what that story gives. And like if you're a fan of like Dexter and all that, like I would highly recommend this series for sure. Like it's just so good that that's all I can say about a lot of these, but they're just so good. The next series that I want to recommend, I actually just recently came across this, and funny enough, it was because I was trying to look for a different book that I had read in the past, that I can't remember the title of, which I was going to recommend on this, but because I didn't on this podcast episode, but because I can't remember the name of it, let alone the author, like it would be counterintuitive to like kind of recommend a book that like I can't even tell you the name of. So, but I was trying to look for it a while back because like this book literally will pop into like the plot of the book. I know by like clearly, like I could tell you what happens in this story, but I could not for the life of me tell you like the name of it or anything like that. And it pops into my mind every so often because I'll remember at random moments, and I'll try my best to find it, and then I never do. But yeah, so I was like trying to look up this book by like just typing in like parts of the plot or the synopsis or whatever, and then I still didn't find it. But I did come across this other series, which I again read the first book of and like started the second one. But I own the whole series hard copy, so I do like plan to get back into reading it. But it's called the Crash series. I think that's the name of the first book. I am like blinding near, so I can't really see from this far. But I think it's called Crash, the Crash series, and it's by Nicole Williams. The books are Crash. I don't know. I can't read them. And I don't know it off of the top of my head, but yeah, like the first book is called Crash, and then there's like two other ones that both start with C's as well. I want to say one of them is like Crush or something like that. I don't know, but yeah, the first book was very interesting. It's honestly, it could be a good quick read like within a day or two if you like really sat down and put your focus into it. Like it's like really intriguing, and at times it was hard for me to put the book down. Like I had to like limit myself to like a couple chapters a day, but like once you get into like really get into the story, like it's hard to put down. But essentially what it's about is the story of this, I can't remember their names, the story of this girl who like is just trying to live her life, and like her family's a bit like complex, like her family life's a bit complex because of how each her mom, her dad, and like her are all dealing and coping with loss and grief differently. And so yeah, so they're like you kind of like get a bit of like her family life, and then she comes across this boy who she ends up falling for, and like honestly they kind of fall for each other, but like he's like the town's bad boy, like he, in the sense that like he's got known to get in trouble with the law, and like he lives in like a boys home, which does like, so he already like faces like discrimination and stuff like that because of that, which is like kind of messed up. Like it's just just following their journey essentially of like how they come together and then go apart and then come back together. It's just there's more to it than that, but like I'm like not trying to like like just tell you the entire story, but um but yeah, like they're like it sounds like your stereotypical story, but there's like so much more to it than I'm saying. Oh, and I should have said this at the beginning of the podcast, but I like forgot. A lot of these books do deal with like heavy topics, so I will give like a content warning for that. Like obviously the I Hunt Killer series is gonna deal with like death and very graphic descriptions of like murder and like just gore, I guess. Vampire Girl series doesn't really have anything that I can think of where it needs like a content warning. The Crash series, again, death, sexual assault. I think that from what I can remember, and that's just the first book. Like I said, I haven't read much into the second book, but I like read the first two chapters maybe. But yeah, and like I'll try to like I know that like kinds of gives some stuff away, but like I would rather be safe than sorry by giving you guys like content warnings for these books as well if I'm going to be recommending them, because I know not everyone can handle situations the same and I don't know everybody's experience. So just bear in mind those warnings. I'll try to do that for the rest of these books as well, or series. But yeah, so that series, the Crash series by Nicole Williams, I would recommend. I mean, like I said, granted I haven't read a whole lot of it yet, other than just the first book. I mean, it's a trilogy, so there's like not much to it, but I again would recommend it. So okay, so the next thing I have down on my list isn't really a specific book or series, but an author whose books I would highly, highly recommend, and that's any book by Sharon Draper. Like, she's like one of my favorite authors of all time. Like her ability, and she tackles a lot of tough topics in her works, and like her ability to do it so well, and like just, and if it matters to you in any sense of the in any way, like she's a Black author and she tackles a lot of, like, I think most of her characters in her stories are Black. I'm like trying to think of some of the series, and I will name some of the books and series off the top of my head that I know, that I've read, that I've loved. But yeah, so she tackles a lot of those issues that those like the Black community deals with within it, but as well as like just general topics that like high schoolers, or well, yeah, I think most of them are high schoolers that I've read stories of, that deal with like those things. So like even if it's not something that you can completely relate to on the aspect of like racial issues, it is something that you can relate to in the sense of like high school troubles or whatever. Like she mostly writes young adult books, so yeah. But like some of her books, that I say some, but I've like read a good majority of her work. But like one of my favorite books by her is called Panic, and that one I would have to give a strong like content warning for sexual assault and kidnapping, and yeah, there's just like I'm trying to think, but essentially what the story is about these four dancers, and we see life from their perspectives, and it follows I want to say the main girl's name, one of the girls' name is Diamond, but I'm not 100% sure on that. And she essentially gets taken by this guy and made to do adult videos, is how I'm going to phrase it. And hopefully, since this is going on YouTube, hopefully YouTube doesn't take it down because I didn't say fully what it was. But she's made to do that. Oh, and content warning for like drug. Well, I guess that falls under like the sexual assault, but like she is drugged. But yeah, and then it follows her best friend who was with her when she was taken. Well, she wasn't like with her, like by her side, but like they were together, and then like her friend had to go run to get something, and in that time, like her friend, the Diamond, I'm gonna call her Diamond. I don't even know if that's her name, but like for some reason that's like the name I'm remembering right now. And if I am correct, like I'll be surprised. But when Diamond was taken, so it follows like her dealing with the fact that like she was there and she feels like she could have done more, shouldn't have left, and having to deal with like talking with the police and all that so they can find her. And then it follows two other people who are also dancers with like at the same dance studio, and I can't remember the names, but one's a guy who likes the other person who's a girl, and I can't remember fully his like family situation or his life situation, but like I think a lot of his too like has to do with the fact that he's a guy dancer and like he deals with stuff like that. And then we see the girl that he likes, who is actually already in a relationship, but her boyfriend is like the worst, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, so essentially like the book follows all four of their stories, and like they're interconnected through not only the dance studio, but they also go to the same high school. So like so yeah, like you just follow their story to the point of like when Diamond is saved. Again, I don't even know if that's her name, but it's like that's for some reason the name that's sticking with me right now. But yeah, Panic by Sharon Draper is such a good book. I highly recommend it. But again, like I said, I have to give heavy content warning for that. So if that's something like you can't really handle, then it might not be the book for you. But like if you can stomach stuff like that, or like it's not going to cause you any harm, then I highly recommend giving it a read. Another series from her, or like a book series from her that I recommend, is the Tears of a Tiger series. I actually read that in middle school, which again, that covers like a lot of like heavy topics ranging from like death and suicide and eating disorders and like just and more sexual assault. I guess that's like been a big content warning throughout this entire thing. But like because she talks about like she has strong female characters a lot of the time in her stories, and that's just a reality of being a female, sadly, is that we are big targets of sexual assault. And so but yeah, there's 3 books to that series: Tears of the Tiger, Forged by Fire, and Darkness Before Dawn. Highly recommend it. Like again, like I said, I was in middle school when I was introduced to the series, and I think in my reading class, because at my middle school for some reason like it was in 6th grade, because that was when I read it. But like in 6th grade we had like language arts and reading. Like it wasn't in the same class, like they were their own separate classes. But in reading class, as you could guess by the name, we read a lot, and I think it was to work on our reading comprehension. I don't know, but we read that trilogy in that class, so that's when I was first introduced to it. And she does such a great way of like addressing these topics and like not making light of them, but like not being too like hard, like I don't know how to explain it. But again, like if those are things that like could possibly trigger you, like please I should be saying trigger warning, really, honestly, but instead of content warning, but it's like that's the content that's in there. So but yeah, so please just be mindful of that in the Tears of a Tiger series by Sharon Draper. Another series by her is the Battle of Jericho series. That one deals with death, which I think that's like really the only thing in there. But and funny enough with that series, I actually read the sequel before I read the first book. So it's another trilogy, but it's like Tears of the Tiger. I'm still stuck on that one. Battle of Jericho, November Blues, and Just Another Hero. I own Battle of Jericho and Just Another Hero. I do not own November Blues, and that's because I had read all of November Blues like when I had got it from a library, which then it was upon finishing the book that I realized that it was actually the sequel to the Battle of Jericho. So then I like bought the Battle of Jericho and then eventually like read that, and then I got Just Another Hero because it's like the last book of the trilogy. And I have not read that. I think I've read like maybe the first chapter, but I haven't finished it. And I still own it, so I do plan to eventually like finish it to finish out the stories. But like each book covers like a different like the main character is different. The second book covers teen pregnancy and like the issues that come with that, and like it's so much deeper than that though, like her story. Same thing with, I forgot to mention this in Tears of a Tiger, the series. Each book follows a different person, but they're all like friends or interconnected. Like their lives are connected to one another. So yeah, so that's something she tends to do with her series. And then one last book from Sharon Draper that I can think of off the top of my head that I really loved and just adored which I actually just learned that there's actually a sequel to it coming out this year, which I was surprised by because I didn't know that was happening, and I only recently found out because I was looking up this story when I was planning to do this podcast episode. But anyway, so Sharon Draper has a book called Out of My Mind, where I think this is like one of the first or only books of hers that I've read. She has many books that I haven't even read yet, but one of like her first books that doesn't really cover like high school like dramas and issues, but I don't remember if they were like in middle school or elementary school, but I think I want to say middle school. But it follows the life of this girl. I don't remember her name. For some reason, I want to say Melody, but I don't think that's her name at all. I don't know. And I don't like to look things up while recording for the podcast. I mean, like, I look at research beforehand and stuff like that, but like while recording, I don't like to stop and look things up because I can't do two things at once. But anyway, it follows this girl who is like, she's a disabled girl. I can't remember what she has. I think she has Down syndrome. I don't know, but she's super smart. And she has like this computer that she can use to communicate that's like attached to her wheelchair. And she wants to be a part of like this academic I forget what they're called, but like the like those teams where you compete like in academics or whatever against other schools or whatnot. And I think hers is like, I want to say in math or something like that, or it could be like a range of subjects. I don't fully remember, but she wants to be a part of that team. But like, of course, like the school is like, well, no, like you can't because of your needs or whatever, your special needs and whatnot. And it's like, or they're like doubt her abilities, but then she proves herself. and then she gets to be a part of the team, but then there's like issues within that, and like, oh, it was a really good book, and it like opens your eyes to like how much judgment like people are so quick to cast on those like with disabilities and special needs and stuff. So I highly recommend that book for everybody. um yeah, so, and there's not really any like trigger warnings or content warnings for that, I don't think, because it's like it's more dealing with the issues of like discrimination against disabilities. But yeah, so those are the Sharon Draper books that I've read that I highly recommend. Again, like any book by Sharon Draper honestly is uh like a 10 out of 10 in my book. Yeah. It's 10 out of 10. Like I highly recommend her as a author in general. But yeah, so I didn't realize I was at 30 minutes already. I didn't think I could talk this long about some books. And I'm only like barely halfway through my list, but I'll try to be fast about these other ones. Cuz I don't want to go too long, but I mean, the original plan was to have like hour-long episodes originally for this podcast, and I've been doing 30-minute ones because I didn't want to talk anybody's, I don't know, that's like the whole point of a podcast. Anyway, that's not what we're here for today. We're here to talk about books. So the next series that I highly recommend, I found this series in high school. Again, this was my senior year. It was from me like just lingering in the library after school waiting for a ride, I think was the reason that I was there. Yeah. I mean, that's typically how it goes for me. And because I didn't have my license yet. That's a whole nother story. Um but yeah, so I was at the library and I came across this series, and then I fell in love, and then also too like my high school experience my senior year was a bit different, and so like I had a lot of time to read for leisurely reasons. And yeah, so the series is called, it's the Vision series by Lisa McMahon. And the second book, I believe I read all in a span of like 24 hours. Like within 24 hours I read the book because it was so good I couldn't put it down. And so the first book follows this, I can't remember their names, but this girl who keeps having this vision of this accident that happens that costs the life of like a certain, I can't remember the number of people, but she keeps seeing this vision, and like in one of the body bags she sees the face of her crush, which her crush is from a family that's like it's like a Romeo Juliet type of situation where like she's not supposed to be friendly or like this family because like her family and like the other family are both restaurant owners, and there was some like beef about like a recipe or something like that. I don't I don't fully remember, but like it was, so she's like not supposed to like this guy, but she does, and she keeps seeing this vision of him like dying, and so she's trying to figure out, but she has no clue of like time or anything like that. Like her vision doesn't give her much, so she's trying to figure out how she can stop it from becoming a reality. And along the way she like kind of she start like her and her crush like get together eventually, essentially, yeah. And then the second book covers or is in her point of view still, but like it's not her having the visions, it's her crush now. And so like they're on this journey of like working together to try to stop his vision from becoming a reality. And for the second book, I have to give a trigger / content warning for gun violence. Yeah, that's yeah. And so it's, I think they each have names that like coincide with like kind of the sense of the vision. But yeah, so then that's the second book, and then the third book, because it's another trilogy, is the story of them two trying to help somebody else who's having visions now try to stop theirs from becoming a reality. And so, and like all of them are connected, and I'm not going to explain that because that's like a big plot point that I don't want to give away. So you'll just have to read the series to understand how each of them end up with their visions and how they're connected. But yeah, so I highly recommend that. Like I said, I read the second book in the span of 24 hours, and I think the third book I read in like a week, less than a week maybe. The first book took me a minute because like I was trying to readjust to like my new normal in my senior year of high school. So yeah. But like after that, like once I finished it, or like once I got going with the book, it was hard to put it down. And it like after like a week or two, like I was able to finish it, and then like I went back to the library so that I could get the sequel, which then I finished in a day, and then had to go right back the next day to get the third book. But yeah, so the Vision series by Lisa McMahon, highly recommend it. The next book that, okay, so from here on out, they're not series but books. So hopefully it goes by shorter. But the first book I want to recommend, that's just a singular book, is called Some Boys by Patty Blount. This one has a trigger warning for sexual assault. That's a reoccurring theme for sure today. And I don't mean for it to be, but like that's just, I don't know. I guess that was just the kind of stories that like intrigued me the most. That sounds like really bad, I feel like, but like it was really more the summaries and like the plots that like really kept me reeled in, I guess, or intrigued. And because like I was never one to judge a book by its cover. I was always one to judge it by its summary and then like give it a chance. But for this one, it follows this girl who was assaulted by her ex-boyfriend, who is like the captain of the lacrosse team, which like lacrosse at this school is like football for most like US high schools, but he's the captain of the team, and like she's being like blamed. This story essentially covers like the issue of victim blaming and like siding with the perpetrator instead of the victim. And like so she's dealing with like harassment in the sense of like people are like just going at, like just yeah, like she loses her friends and all that, except for the best friend of her ex-boyfriend actually like believes her, and then he's trying to help her or whatever, and like they fall in love or whatever, like they end up together. And then there's more to like his like story. I think we get both perspectives if I'm remembering correctly, but yeah, like they're just how they go about like trying to prove it, which it even sucks that they need to prove it, but like getting hit like the ex-boyfriend to admit that like he did it essentially. But there's like a lot of like more drama within that, so there's still more to the story that you should definitely read. Some Boys by Patty Blount, I think is how you pronounce her last name, which is Blount. Patty, Patty, you know. But yeah, so on to the next book. The next book I highly recommend is Lark by Tracy Porter. This one, I think I was like either a freshman in high school or like in 8th grade when I read it. But I still remember it like pretty well. And I remember loving it and like actually crying near the end of it. But this one, again, like deals with death And I think there was assault in it, sexual assault, but like I don't think it goes into full detail or anything like that. Like it's maybe more hinted at or something like that. But this story covers, oh shoot, my bad, I just hit my mic. But this story is about, I think it covers like 3 perspectives. The one is from the perspective of the victim of the assault, who was also killed, and like her ghost or whatever, and like her view into the afterlife, and like trying to come to terms with like what happened to her. Then the second view we get is like this little girl that she used to babysit when she was alive sees her ghost, and like she's trying to help her out with like coming to terms or trying to figure out what happened, because I think like her ghost is confused as to like why she's a ghost. And then the third perspective is like because I think she was like a gymnast or something like that, and this third person I think was like her friend or like a fellow gymnast that like was familiar with her or whatever, who is now looking after this little girl, and like the little girl like explains to her like what that she sees her ghost and whatever, and I think like she tries to help as well. I don't know. They're all tied together though. And like I said, it's been a while since I've actually read it, so I'm not 100% clear on the details. But yeah, so they all essentially work together to allow her to move on in the afterlife or whatnot. And there's like more to each of their stories as well, and like what happens. But yeah, that one was, it was a good story. I really enjoyed it. Like again, like I said, it did make me cry, but like cried in the sense of like I felt for the characters, and the ending just was like I was happy that you know, with how everything turned out. So, Lark, like the bird. Which I think ends up being actually a symbolism, like a point of symbolism in the story. But Lark by Tracy Porter. The next one I recommend is The Truth About Alice by Jennifer Matthew, I think is how you pronounce the last name. But it's not spelled like the typical Matthew. It's Mathieu. So I don't even know if I pronounced it right or if it's pronounced like Matthew, but like that's how I see it and my brain takes it. So yeah, and essentially I want to say it's been a while since I've read this one too. I think this was another one I read in high school, and it was just because like I came across I think this one I kind of judge by the cover, because it had like an interesting cover, along with the title of it. I was like, what is this about? And then I read the description, and I was like, oh, okay, like this seems interesting. But essentially what I remember it being about is like, it's from the perspective of this guy, I think. And like he keeps hearing these rumors about like his, I think he's either a teammate or a friend, or like just somebody he's like familiar with or close to, in some aspect. Something happened to him, and everyone's like spreading rumors or talking about like this girl named Alice, who is like essentially blamed for like what happened to him. And like he's trying to learn like the truth, because he doesn't believe all the rumors that are being said about her, because like he's interacted with her a few times, and like she doesn't seem to be like the type of person that everyone's claiming her to be, essentially. But yeah, there's like a lot there. Again, I don't remember it too clearly, but I remember thoroughly enjoying it, and like the story and as a whole. I think you do get like a another perspective within it. I don't remember fully, but I think it's like his, and I don't know if you get Alice's perspective, but I know you get a female's perspective, and I don't know if it's like an old friend of Alice or what. But yeah, maybe, I don't know. Again, I actually like plan to buy this book at some point and reread it because I remember enjoying it that much. But yeah, so The Truth About Alice by Jennifer Matthew. Again, I don't know if that's how her last name is pronounced, but it's spelled Mathiue. Or IEU, my bad. The next book, this is the final, like, book that's, like, a fully, like, just written book. And it's also not, like, a nonfiction story or a fictional story. This is actually a memoir by Paige Rawle, called Positive. Okay, again, technical issues. I don't know what's happening today. But yeah, Positive by Paige Rawle, RAWL, I think, or is how you spell it. So I think that's how it's pronounced. But it's like her story of like growing up with HIV or I don't know. Like I think because the whole thing is supposed to be a play on HIV positive, I think. I don't, but like essentially like her journey with growing up and dealing with that and like how people perceived her and like now her life as an adult as well. And I remember being introduced to it in high school, and like, and I was intrigued by it because she talks a lot about like this hospital that I actually like at the time was a patient at, an outpatient at. But so yeah, that's what like drew me to it initially. But like just learning her story and like how she's had to deal with it, and just like how people, and like one, because she was a kid, I think, when she initially like learned about it, like her condition, and like how like growing up that can affect kids. And yeah, so it was a beautiful memoir, highly recommend it. But yeah, so Positive by Paige Rawle, I don't know, RAWL. And the last book that I plan to talk about today on this podcast is not your stereotypical book. It is a graphic novel, so kind of like the style of manga, however you pronounce it. But it's not considered manga because it is a graphic. Oh, I just remembered another graphic novel I did end up reading in high school, but I don't remember the name of it. But I remember like some of the bits of it. Anyway, and I just remembered another series too. I'll probably drop that in there at the end. But this Queen Bee by China Clugston. China spelled CHYNNA, and then Clugston spelled CLUGSTON. It's a graphic novel about these two, like, or this new girl at the high school, who's kind of like picked on by the queen bee of the school. And like the new girl actually like has telekinetic powers, and I believe the queen bee does too. And like they kind of learn this about each other, and so that like fuels their feud or whatever. And yeah, it's just, I don't know, forget the plot, but I do remember like thoroughly enjoying it. But I think that was like a book I read in middle school, because I do remember like getting it at a book fair or something like that. I don't know, because I don't even think did we have book fairs in middle school? Or maybe I would have had it been like 6th grade middle school, and like I had just got it from a book fair in like 5th grade or something like that. I don't know, but it was a good book. I liked it. It was a good story. I mean, if you're like a fan of graphic novels and like that kind of story, then yeah, highly recommend it. An honorable mention, I don't know the author of the series, so I guess I will have to look it up as I'm talking about it. But like an honorable mention for this, since it is like a book podcast, but a good series that I like ended up I remember loving in like or high school or middle school, but like it's a big series of books. But the Dork Diaries was one of my favorite stories, and like it's a good story in the sense that like it's a good mix of like well written story with also like images drawn in it as well. And like the writing style of it really looks like it's kind of like what is it called? Diary of excuse me, that like started to come out wrong. Diary of a Wimpy Kid, but like from a female's perspective. And yeah, I don't know. It's just I love that series. I was a fan of Diary of a Wimpy Kid as well, but like I was more intrigued by the Dork Diary series. Like I read those books more than I did Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I saw the movies for Diary of a Wimpy Kid, but I didn't really read the books. This series, however, I don't know how many of the books I read, but I read a good amount of them. And the series, the Dork Diary series, is by Rachel Renee Russell. Yeah, that one's like, I don't know the age range of like listeners for this podcast, but like it's more for like preteen, early teens audience. I mean, honestly, you can read books at whatever age, at whatever age you want to read them. Like there is no age limit on books. And if people judge you for like reading a book that's like, oh, that's a child's book, then who cares? Like, so like let me enjoy what I want to enjoy, what I want to read. It seemed interesting, so I'm going to indulge in it, you know? So yeah. But that is that's all that I have for this week's episode. I did not plan to talk about Dork Diaries because I had forgot about it for a second. And so had to throw that in there. But yeah, that's all. Sorry, I was like trying to add that to my list because I did want to keep this list that I wrote down for future reference. But that's all I have for this week's episode. If you have read any of these books, please let me know. I would love to hear your opinion on them and if you agree with me if they're good or not. And if you do end up reading these books because of this podcast, let me know. Tell me. I would be so interested into learning like if people actually like took my recommendation and like actually enjoyed the story or not. But yeah, and you can tell me in the comments on the YouTube version of this podcast. I know you can't really leave comments on Spotify and all the other well, at least I don't know about the other sources, but or you can tweet me at my Twitter, which is at Lyssa, LYSSA _white, like the color, WHITE. And just tweet me there. Let me know if you read any of these books and if you also recommend them, or if you read them after listening to the podcast because you heard about it and you were like, that does sound interesting, and took the time to read it. Like, let me know. But yeah, so that's all I have for this week's episode. Again, I will try to get a podcast episode out next week, but the chances of like, I'm going to try my very best. I'll try, but like the chances of it either A, being on time, or like B, even being posted are slimmer than not, because I will be visiting home to tie up some loose ends and stuff like that. So, yeah. Thank you for listening to this week's episode where I talk about my book recommendations. See you guys next week, hopefully. Peace.